Well, thank you guys for all taking some time out of your Friday afternoon to come to one of the last presentations at CrimCon. So I'm Chloe Wentzlof. I'm a second-year PhD student here at Bowling Green State University. My colleagues on this project are Philip Stinson and Steve Brewer. We're going to be presenting on police crime against Black victims. So before I get into our study, I wanted to give some theoretical framework and some background on our project. So critical race theorists essentially state that race, racism, and structures of power are ingrained in every aspect of the criminal justice system. And this starts at police encounters and the discretionary decisions of those police encounters and goes all the way through the processes of the criminal justice system, leading to prosecuting decisions as well as sentencing decisions. Individual racism as well as institutional racism is prevalent here. Terry versus Ohio laid the foundation in support of this racially biased policing, and that kind of got the discussion started. They stated that Blacks are almost 3 times more likely than whites to be pulled over by the police for a traffic stop. During this conversation, there was a term coined Blackophobia, which described Black individuals as criminals, which explains why police officers were fearful of them. Continuing on with this conversation, police legitimacy and kind of the procedural justice, it kind of explains the relationship between police officers and the community in which they're policing. So does this community feel like they're treated fairly, as well as are they accepting of the judgments of the police officers and other actors of the criminal justice system? So in 2000, it was stated that many Black people are distrustful of the police. This is very prevalent still today. Police militarization is prevalent with the violent side of policing. This starts in police academies, where many police academies are seen to be pretty comparable to military basic training, where they're taught this warrior mentality and they're taught to prepare for battle, essentially. So getting into our presentation a little bit, or our study, the Police Integrity Research Group at Bowling Green has a larger research project that this is just a smaller part of. So the Police Integrity Research Group studies sworn law enforcement officers who have been arrested. We identify our cases through Google News search engine by the use of Google Alerts, and our inclusion criteria states that the individual must be a sworn non-federal law enforcement officer at the time of the arrest or at the commission of the crime. Additionally, they have to be arrested after 2005. And the big one that I kind of want to highlight here is they do have to be formally arrested or criminally charged. So if there's just simply allegations against an officer or reports of their misconduct, they don't necessarily fall into our data set. It is only once they are formally criminally processed through the criminal justice system in which they meet our inclusion criteria. So our unit of analysis here is criminal arrest case. This allows for a singular officer to have multiple victims or multiple dates of arrest. So a singular officer can have multiple arrest cases. Our study focuses on a decade of police crime from 2005 to 2014. And a limitation of our study is the missing data associated with victim race, which has reduced our sample size. So our sample size is 865 criminal arrest cases. There are 2 limitations there. The first is these cases have to have a victim identified. For example, a lot of DUI cases don't have victims. So 1, there has to be a victim identified, and 2, we have to know that victim's race. So some of the descriptives that I kind of threw on this slide here essentially are just the basic things that we capture for every criminal arrest case. The officers vary by age, rank, years of service, race, sex. Agencies vary by region, types of agency. And then victims also vary by relationship to officer, age, race, sex. This is pretty standard compared to our larger research project, but something that I do want to note here is that 38.7% of the cases that we identify in our sample are victims that we've identified as Black. Additionally, not on this slide, I do want to highlight our 5 different types of crime, which are violence-related, alcohol-related, drug-related, sex-related, and profit-motivated. Any of these cases can fall into none or all or any combination in between of these different types of crime. So this is something that I'll touch on later in this presentation. So for our preliminary results here, we looked at the bivariate associations for victim race. So in order to do this, we have a dichotomous variable, Black versus non-Black, and we ran some correlations against some of our variables here. So some things to point out, these are all statistically significant, so the association or correlation is there, and then the top one that it was correlated with, that this victim race was correlated with, was geographical region. So this essentially states that Southern states had higher than expected levels of crimes involving Black victims. Similar trends were seen for duty status and official capacity. So on-duty crimes, as well as crimes committed in an officer's official capacity, were correlated with crimes against Black victims. Highlighted here in this orange box is violence related. So this is the first type of crime that kind of presented itself in these bivariate associations as significant with Black victims. So violence related crimes are associated positively with Black victims, which essentially means that has a higher than expected count there. For obvious reasons, we don't want to include victim race as our dependent variable in this study. So essentially, we took a closer look at those violence-related crimes and kind of flipped it, and we looked at the violence-related bivariate associations. The first three here, profit-motivated, alcohol-related, and drug-related, I do want to point out, those are obviously other types of crime. Those are very strongly correlated with violence-related. In the sense that if a crime is categorized as any of those three, it is associated with non-violence related crimes. This is true for those three, profit-related, alcohol, and drug, but it's the opposite for sex-related. Sex-related crimes are often forcible, which we categorize as violence-related. I do want to make note of the officer and victim characteristics here. One of the things that we need to do further research on is that victim ethnicity. That is another dichotomous variable for Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. Hispanic victims are actually associated with non-violent crimes. This is something that we hope to have some future research on, but we haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. And then again, there is that victim race variable popping up as significantly related to violence-related crimes. Next, we wanted to examine this at a multivariate level. So we wanted to see if these associations held true at a multivariate level. Here we used a Che decision tree model with our dependent variable being violence-related criminal arrest cases. Going down the right side of the decision tree is Black victims, and going down the left side of the decision tree is non-Black victims. That first split there, I wanted to point out that 80.9% of non-Black victims we identified as violence related, compared to 94.6% of crimes against Black victims being violence related. This is statistically significant, and this is one of our main conclusions of our research here. Going down that right side of the decision tree, we also have conclusions about a high number of cases involving Black victims of an officer brandishing a firearm, as well as these cases are more likely to be prosecuted in federal court. Our conclusions here are still in the preliminary stages. So our main conclusion here is that criminal arrest cases of law enforcement officers with Black victims are more strongly associated with violence-related crime compared to police crime against non-Black victims. Additionally, we found over 40% of the arrest cases involve police crime against Black victims where the arrested officer brandished their firearm. So for our policy implications, here with the Police Integrity Research Group, our two main goals of our research group is to inform the public and improve policing. I think we've begun to scratch the surface on informing the public with this presentation today, but we're kind of hoping to collaborate on some policy implications that are potential improvements for policing, and we would love to hear any feedback that any of you guys may have here today. If you would like further information, the Henry A. Wallace Police Crime Database is our public database, which presents some of our data here at a public platform. But thank you.